Well, good morning, everybody. This is DearMamaSal. It's raining. It's 10 degrees Canadian, which, of course, is 50 degrees American. But it's a great day. I've got a couple of things I want to talk about today. A couple of things happened over the weekend, and I thought, other people may be struggling with this as well, or may need this information as well. So I thought I'd just talk about them this morning. The first one was an incredible situation where one of our viewers has recently been diagnosed with something. And when I was chatting with her, the interesting thing was that she had not gone onto the internet to research it. And with today's technology and with all that we have available to us today, that struck me as unusual. Oops. Struck me as unusual because I think for me it would be the first thing I would do. However, when I queried that, what I heard was that there were two reasons why she hadn't Googled it. Number one, because she was scared. Totally understood that. And number two, because she wouldn't necessarily understand what she was reading. There'd be too much gobbledygook for her to be able to understand it. And I thought that was very relevant as well. And which sites would you go to be reliable, for example? So I really heard that. And I thought, boy, that's so true. And so, let me just change the angle here. So what I offered to do was to actually go and Google for her. To get cut through the gobbledygook, get down to what I could see was the basic of it, and then try and translate that to her in a way that would make sense. And she was most thankful and said if I would do that, she'd be most grateful to me. So I did. I mean, it was late into the night and early morning, but it was like, gosh, that's not a lot to do for somebody who's in terror. So I went to a number of different sites that I thought were reputable. I got the same sort of information from each of the sites, so I knew that to be pretty credible. And then I had some questions. So I went back to the person who was still awake and said, I'm sorry, but over the weekend they've demolished like a plot of land that was there on last weekend. Apparently they've chopped it all down this week. Just over the weekend. Like, boom. And they're obviously about to build on it. Anyway, so I had a couple of questions, and one of them was, had they told her what type of problem she had? Because this particular illness comes in different types, and like about 4 different types, and they have different treatments and different prognoses. So no, she didn't know, because she didn't know there were different types. So I said, well, that's information you now have. There are different types, and it's important to know which one it is, because the information changes from one to the other. So then from the symptoms she'd given me, and you understand I'm not a doctor, and I kept reminding her of that, but there was a correlation between the symptoms that she was giving me and one particular type. So I said, look, I'm going to give you the information on this particular type based on the information you've given me. And it might be totally untrue, but at least it is based on the information. And I managed to source out some videos to show what caused the problem and then what they do to correct the problem. So the whole point that I'm mentioning this is I wonder whether this is true of a lot of people, which is when you get scared, and rightly so, don't get me wrong, when you get scared that it sort of shuts you down, you don't want to find out anything else because you don't want to know the truth. And it was interesting because I heard my friend Laurie say, for example, that one of her acquaintances has an illness, and that person will not go to the doctor because she's more fearful of what the truth may be. So that fear of the truth is holding her back from getting treatment. So I don't know about you, that's pretty scary stuff. Because in today's technology, starting treatment could save your life. If you want it saved. So I gave all credit to the viewer that asked me I didn't ask me to, I offered to, who accepted my offer of going to check into some stuff for her. And so that's really my question is, do any of you relate to what she was doing, that when you hear this sort of stuff, you just don't want to know anymore because maybe knowing is worse. You know, as I once said, you know, ignorance is bliss for you. Except how can it be bliss if you know that this is something that you're not dealing with? Anyway. But all credit to the viewer, and well done. I was really, really impressed. Really impressed. And the other thing was when I gave the pros and cons of this particular problem, I actually gave her the second to worst scenario first. Because I reckon anybody with half a brain worked out what the worst case scenario was. And in this case, it wasn't death, but something else. Because we're normally pretty good about that. And then I gave her the second worst case, which is curable. And then managed to source out a video to explain how they do that. And it was cute because the reply was, no, I want to know what the worst case scenario is. So I said, well, fair enough. This is the worst case scenario, this is what will happen. And her reality on that one was, if I know the worst case scenario, then anything else other than that is a pleasant surprise. And I guess there are a lot of us that fall into that category. It's not that we're negative, it's like we want to deal with the worst case scenario. And I'm one of those people. So I totally related to that. If I'm going in for a major operation that I know, could go wrong, I will make sure my affairs are in order beforehand. Not because I am a pessimist, it's because I'm a realist. And I've had people say to me, really, it's not necessary. I said, no, for you it's not. For me it is. I live on my own. I don't have family here. Anything happens to me, things need to be in order to some degree. Anyway, so that was the one thing. And the other thing that came up this weekend was my friend who's staying with me, as you know, has been going through a particularly tough time. Not only has she been going through a tough time with her finances, she's been going through a tough time emotionally. And then worse than that as well, she's also been going through a tough time physically. In other words, her health is also causing a problem. And I must admit that I got quite steamed on the first night that I got home and found out that she hadn't eaten all day. And that was my lack of control. But I'd left a fridge full of food, and so there was no reason whatsoever that I could think of why anybody would choose not to eat all day. And then I realized that if anything, she had gone into that little girl place, you know what I mean, the child in her was taking control. She didn't want to upset me by eating the wrong thing, so she'd rather not eat at all. Now, that's a pretty fearful place to be. And after I realized that, I must admit I changed my attitude rather fast. Because that meant that she was in trauma, and you deal with trauma in a totally different way. So I did. But anyway, we got to talking a little bit over the weekend. And one of the things that I was saying to her was that, unfortunately, I was the one person maybe in the world that actually believed her to be incredibly smart. She doesn't at the moment, and her last job didn't. But I've worked with her, and I know how smart she is. So, you know, for many years she was my assistant, so, you know, I know what she's capable of. And so I realized that the next scenario that could happen would be that I would have expectations of her greater than her ability at this time. So I made sure that I said this weekend, I don't need you to live up to my expectations. And you need to hear that. What I would ask of you is that every night you ask yourself, did I do my best today? Because there's a great difference between how you survive and what your best is. And I think if you do your best every day or close to it, you will actually improve your life dramatically. And I know all about those voices in your head that say, oh, well, we'll do it a bit later, or we'll do it now. I'm a procrastinator. I know about things like that. But I also know that it's stuff that keeps you from doing what you can do. And when you're trying to get healthy, it's important to get achievement, because it pushes the serotonin levels and makes you feel a whole lot better. So that was my point, which was just ask yourself, did I do my best today? And if your answer to that is yes, or pretty darn close, then know you've had a great day. And that is enough. So I ask each of you that are struggling in terms of your emotional health at the moment, did you do your best today? Because that's all anybody can ask of you. And as I said to my friend, if you lie to yourself about that, you'll know. And then why would you lie to yourself? I understand that you may want to lie to other people to cover up what's going on, but why would you lie to yourself? And actually, now that I think about it, there was a third thing that came up this weekend. And that had to do with the fact that I don't stop. That's the perception. You know, that I work all day, come home, cook dinner, or rather, come home, make a coffee, go to the computer, answer the mail, start uploading, go cook dinner, clean up, finish uploading, and I go to bed. And that's true. And then at the weekends, I try and fit in some of the other things like cleaning and organizing and doing stuff, shopping. Actually, I try and do some shopping on the way home each night, or each night that I need anything. I just find it works better for me because it leaves my weekends more clear. But the comment that was made was, you know, you just don't sit and do nothing. And that's actually a very valid perception, although it's not necessarily the truth. In other words, I think I do that a lot. I do rush around doing things. But it's not true that I don't do nothing, sort of thing. Because one thing was that when that conversation came up, we were sitting doing nothing, having coffee. Now, was my mind also tracking on other levels? Probably. And the other thing was that what I also do is I'm inclined to stop around 11:30, and then I will watch television. I mean, I have the news going on most of the time, I must admit. I'm a news freak, so I have the news going on most of the time. But, you know, sort of come 10:30, I will turn it and start watching programs that I've recorded. And I will normally fit in 2 before midnight, or just after. And then, for those of you who were around last year, you know that I'm big into making blankies in the winter, and I've started, you remember I started Angela's blankie? Well, Angela, if you're watching this one, I started back on your blankie last night. The weather is now officially...